Hi, this is Dr. Bob O. The book talk. I'd like to share a book that I translated. My spiritual hero, his name is Pastor Pang Ji-il. He passed away at age 104 recently, a few years back. I attended his kindergarten in the 60s in Korea, in Yeongdeungpo, Korea. He becomes a spiritual giant. He actually was a missionary, second generation missionary already in the 50s in China, and he got kicked out because the Cultural Revolution, and he started a church in Korea, and he's been faithful leader. I mean, he's spiritual giant. And you know, when I met him at Dominican Republic many years back, I didn't know, but when he mentioned that he had a church in Yeongdeungpo area in the 60s, I said, wait a minute, I think that's the kindergarten I went to. So I went to him and I said, Pastor Pang, I think I went to your kindergarten. And he said, oh, what's your dad's name? And I said, Sunggun Oh. He said, I know him. He was a medical doctor. He had a clinic at that. I mean, he was genius. He said, I visited your house 45 years ago and your dad was not Christian at the time. It's like, wow, how do you remember something that happened 45 years ago, right? He was genius. He's brilliant. And so I end up meeting him when I go Korea. I will visit him when he comes to America. I cancel my trip and then I visit him. And when he was celebrating his 100th birthday in LA, I was part of that, an organizing team, and honored him, and we became good friends. And every time I go to Korea, he had this Bible study on weekdays. He had it for 60 years or something like that. And I would attend that, and his disciples, became who's who in Christian community in Korea. And and after the Bible study, because everybody's like 80, 90 in that Bible study, so I make sure I tied up the place, and he said, oh, I need to check my email, so you just sit next to me. So I sat next to his little bed, tiny apartment, senior's home, and sitting at the apartment, and then I saw sitting on his bed, a bookshelf full of books. I said, oh, Pastor Pang, what are these books? He said, oh, those are the books I have written. He has published 114 books in his lifetime. I'm like, blew my mind. 114 books. You wrote 114 books. Some people's life goal is to read 114 books. You wrote 114 books. Yes, I did. See, at that time when I was talking to him, I published 18 books, and I felt pretty good about myself, And then to realize, wait a minute, for me to catch up with him, I have to publish 2 books a year for the next 45 years. That was a very humbling thing. So I said, sir, I'm publishing books in Cambodia, and I would like to train Cambodian pastors with Korean spirituality. And you're the man. So of course I cannot translate 114 books. So can you just pick one book? Without any hesitation, he just got up, waked up, and took a book out, published this. And the book was titled The Blood Gospel, The Blood Gospel. So I took it and I started translating it into English, because once you translate into English, then there are a lot of translators from a lot of countries that you could translate to their own language. So once I translated to English, then it was translated into Khmer right away. So me and there's a pastor named Steve Kang in America, and we translate this together. He did most of the work. I started it, and time ran out, so he helped me out. And it was so amazing. 1963, he published this book first. 1963, July 3rd, 1963. So I made sure I published this book July 3rd, 2014, 51 years later, right? When he was 103. Wow. So he wrote this when he was 52, and he put second forward 103. And it's amazing how he writes in this book, 1963, at age 52. He says that I rushed. He writes in the foreword, he said, I did it hurriedly because, actually, let me read that. He said, I hastened my writing, although I am quite busy with my ministry, because I felt this gospel of blood had to be published as soon as possible. Because why? because he was already sensing the churches in Korea has become too much prosperity gospel. People are just not, they don't understand the core of the gospel. Core of the gospel is the blood of Christ. Core of the gospel is the cross. And then we turned it into like prosperity gospel. In 1963, he saw that as 52-year-old pastor. He said, I hastened to write this book. Wow. So when this was published, and this was published in also Vietnamese, which I helped, and so I would go to Vietnam and I will train underground pastors with this book. And when it was published in Khmer, I would actually go to a Bible college in Cambodia and train Cambodian seminary students. Matter of fact, there is a Bible college in Phnom Penh that was training some Chinese missionaries. And of course, this book was also translated into Chinese. So we're kind of training people, kind of doing that. And also this book was, because it was translated into Chinese, I was into a city, some city in China, and I was training Chinese pastors. Nowadays I can't because the government shutting down, but I was training Chinese pastors and training them to be missionaries. And I said, you really need to know what gospel is instead of all this technique of church growth and technique. No, sharing the gospel is not about technique. It's about understanding the core of what gospel is. So it was very time appropriate, and we translate this and we start training and teaching, and God has just really, really blessed. And I think this is a book that I highly recommend. So because it is written in English and it's published in Amazon, so I'm going to put the link at the below. But if you don't want to buy Kindle version or paperback, you just want to print, go to academia.edu. Under Robert O, you'll find all my 55 books free of charge. Download it, use it, and if you want to translate it, please just translate it and send me a copy. I have copyright to this book. I work with the organization. Bangjil Moksa님 passed away a few years back at age 104, and the organization that takes care of his publication, all that, gave me permission for this book and 9 more. So I'm in the process of project that I'm involved is translating 10 books by out of 114 significant books by Pastor Pang, and then we're going to actually translate into English. And we're really hoping that the theology of Pastor Pang would be honored and then will be discussed because it's very profound. I mean, we have Asian theologians like Uchimura Kanjo and all these people, and he's in that caliber. Matter of fact, amazing. He has become the Korea's Christian statesman for a long, long time because he's a man of integrity. He's just a wonderful teacher. He's been teaching one Bible study for, like I said, almost 60 years. And everybody out of the Bible study became who's who, the chancellors of all the Bible colleges, and the one who translate the Bible, one who translate the hymn books, and on and on and on. So I think this is a very important book. And if you have chance, please go through. And because as I was translating this book, I realized he doesn't really say anything fancy. He doesn't really put any of his thought. It's just basically transferring of the scriptures. And then he just backs it up. And he doesn't even put illustration that is Korea specific or illustration is historical. He doesn't talk about dead people from Europe, basically. He just talks about the Bible and Bible characters and on and very simple questions. And as I was reading, I said, wow, this is just pure Bible, and so in a way I had an easy time translating and been using this book. And I'm gonna continue to use this book to teach and train. And if you're a missionary in Cambodia, you could have access to both books in English and Khmer. So if you want to train your people through the blood gospel, please, And as I was sharing this with some ministers, a missionary who actually has a Bible college in Phnom Penh, said, and I gave like 200 copies of this book for their students. And after several years, they said, because in a way, America really do not have a theology of suffering. American theology has become just prosperity gospel, at its just general sense. And so even at a seminary Bible college level, we don't really have book on suffering. So this is perfect, blood gospel, the cross, and things like that. So I really want to challenge you, hope that you could get hold of this book. And if you're a missionary in Cambodia, please utilize it. I think because Cambodia, of all the nations in the world, Khmer Rouge, right? The Red Revolution that wiped away 1.7 million and is known as the auto genocide. I think we could redeem that by teaching the blood gospel. All right, well, come, subscribe, and put the bell so that when I put up next one, that you won't miss it. Lord bless you. God bless. Bye.